Today we're going to be looking at verbs that can accept two objects and the patterns that they follow. Let's start with a quick introduction. Some verbs describe the transfer action of an object from one person to another. Examples of these verbs are bring, buy, give, lend, make, offer, and send. These verbs have two possible patterns. The first pattern is verb plus indirect object plus direct object. For example, I gave my mother flowers. Here the verb is gave, the indirect object is my mother, and flowers is the direct object. The second pattern is verb plus direct object plus prepositional phrase. For example, I gave flowers to my mother. Here the verb is gave, the direct object is flowers, and the prepositional phrase is to my mother. Let's look at another example. Okay. These verbs may have two objects, an indirect object and a direct object. For example, they sent my father a box of books. Sent is the verb, my father is the indirect object, a box of books is the direct object. These verbs may have an object and a prepositional phrase. For example, they sent a box of books to my father. The verb is sent, the direct object is a box of books, and to my father is a prepositional phrase. Let's look at the direct object. The direct object is the thing transferring from person to person. So for example, I sent my father a box of books. Okay, what is being transferred from person to person? What is being transferred from I to my father? Well, the direct object, a box of books. That is the direct object. Let's look at another example. I gave flowers to my mother. Okay, what is being transferred from I to my mother? Okay, flowers. The direct object is flowers. Okay, so the direct object is the thing transferring, moving, or being prepared from person to person. Let's look at the receiver of the direct object. The receiver of the direct object can be an indirect object that comes between the verb and the direct object, or the thing being moved or prepared. For example, look at this picture here. Here we have a boy, a carrot, and a rabbit. And the boy gives a carrot to the rabbit. Okay, the boy gives the rabbit a carrot. So, what is it? The indirect object. I gave my rabbit a carrot. What is the indirect object? My rabbit. Okay, a carrot. The receiver can also be in a prepositional phrase after the direct object. Okay, once again, a carrot is the direct object. So let's look at this. I gave a carrot to my rabbit. To my rabbit is a prepositional phrase, and my rabbit, the receiver of the carrot, is in the prepositional phrase, to my rabbit. Let's look now at direct object as a pronoun. Okay? If the direct object is a pronoun, then the direct object pronouns should not come after indirect objects. So I gave my dog it. This is not correct. Don't place direct object pronouns at the end. Instead, direct object pronouns should come before prepositional phrases. For example, I gave them to my dog. So we don't want to say I gave my dog it. Instead, I want to say I gave them or it to my dog. Okay? Moving forward. For or to. Some verbs use a preposition for, and other verbs use a preposition to. Verbs that describe moving an object from person to person use to. Verbs, for example, such as give, hand, lend, owe, pay, read, send, write, and show. These verbs describe moving an object from person to person. For example, I gave an apple to my teacher. Okay? The transfer is moving from I to my teacher. So I use to. Okay. Verbs that describe preparing an object use for. Examples of these verbs are bake, buy, cook, draw, find, make, and paint. For example, I found an apple for my teacher. Okay, I found an apple for my teacher. I'm preparing the apple. I prepare for my teacher. Okay, an apple. Okay, so quick summary. Some verbs describe the transfer of an object from one person to another. These verbs have two patterns. They have verb plus indirect object plus direct object. For example, they sent her a book. The second pattern is verb plus direct object plus prepositional phrase. They sent a book to her. If the direct object is a pronoun, it should come before a prepositional phrase. So don't say, they sent my mother it. Don't say this. Instead, say, they sent it to my mother. A receiver can be an indirect object or can be in a prepositional phrase, even if it's a pronoun. For example, they sent her a book. They sent a book to her. Lastly, some verbs use a preposition for and other verbs use a preposition to. I gave a book to her versus I made a book for her. Remember that the verbs that use that transfer an object from person to person are going to use a preposition to. But the verbs that prepare the object use a preposition for. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in class. If you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please email me.